At 6:12 p.m., a message was sent. It was short, deliberate, and calm in a way that felt unsettling. There was no panic, no hesitation, just a quiet sense of finality. It read like closure, a goodbye without explanation, the kind that makes people stop and immediately feel something is wrong. Within minutes, it was seen, and concern began to build. But what followed did not match the message. The sender did not disappear. Instead, over the next several hours, the phone remained active. Apps were opened, locations shifted, and signals continued to register across cell towers. It wasn't silence or absence. It was movement, measured and trackable. That contradiction raised a critical question. If the message was real, why didn't he disappear right away? He was 32 years old, stable by all outward appearances. He had a routine, steady work, and a reputation for being private, but not withdrawn. There were no clear warning signs in the days leading up to that evening. No unusual behavior, no visible distress, no in-person goodbyes. It had been an ordinary week. Then at 6:12 p.m., his phone sent a message to a small group of contacts. It wasn't public. It was personal, but vague. The wording suggested finality, without urgency. It didn't explain when or how, only that he was done. Replies came quickly, some confused, others concerned, but there was no response. Then at 6:47 p.m., his phone connected to a cell tower several kilometers from his home. At 7:03 p.m., a messaging app showed activity. At 7:26 p.m., navigation was accessed. By 8:10 p.m., the device had moved again. The message had been sent, but the behavior continued. By 9 p.m., concern intensified. By midnight, the situation had become serious, because the question was no longer just where he was, but what had happened in the hours after he said goodbye. Investigators began by establishing a timeline. The message at 6:12 p.m. was confirmed across devices. From there, activity was mapped. At 6:47 p.m., the phone connected to a tower 3 kilometers away. At 7:03 p.m., an app was opened. At 7:26 p.m., navigation data appeared. At 7:58 p.m., another tower connection showed continued movement. At 8:10 p.m., data usage increased. At 8:42 p.m., the device remained stationary for about 18 minutes. At 9:05 p.m., the final signal was recorded. Nearly 3 hours had passed between the message and the last activity. 3 hours of unexplained movement that did not align with an immediate disappearance. That gap became the focus. The message itself was analyzed. Its tone was calm, too calm. It lacked urgency or emotional intensity. Compared to his usual communication style, it felt detached and unfamiliar. Investigators considered that it may have been written in advance. Meanwhile, the device activity suggested time rather than panic. Apps were opened, but no replies sent. Navigation was accessed, but no clear destination confirmed. The behavior suggested a continuation of events, not an abrupt end. Location data helped reconstruct his movements. From his home, he traveled west, then south, following familiar roads. Surveillance footage confirmed a vehicle matching his at 7:51 p.m. near an intersection, again at 8:12 p.m. near a commercial area, and at 8:39 p.m. briefly parked along a quiet street. No clear interaction was visible before it moved again. After that, nothing. Investigators then examined his contacts. One individual stood out. A call had taken place at 5:48 p.m., just 24 minutes before the message. It was the last confirmed interaction. Initially, it was said that a planned meeting that evening never happened, but the movement of his phone suggested otherwise. His route led directly toward that meeting location, and his final signal at 9:05 p.m. was recorded nearby. When confronted, the account changed. The meeting had happened briefly and privately during the same window after the message was sent. Within that time, something occurred that altered everything. The message was no longer seen as a spontaneous farewell. It appeared to be part of a constructed narrative. It created the impression of a voluntary disappearance. But that assumption depended on timing, and the timeline did not support it. The hours after the message revealed continued movement and activity that contradicted the idea of immediate intent. The message did not mark the end. It concealed what came next. In the end, the case was resolved through timing. The timestamps, the movement, and the inconsistencies told a different story than the message itself. For those who knew him, the realization was difficult. The message had shaped their understanding, but it was not the truth. The investigation relied on data, not assumptions, and the data revealed everything. Words can suggest intention, but time exposes reality. In this case, the truth was found in the hours that followed hours that refused to align with the message. He did not disappear when he said he would. Something happened after, something the message was never meant to explain. The message said goodbye, but the truth was still unfolding.